The warning lights flashed red across Lieutenant Taeho Kim's control panel. His small fighter ship shook violently as black smoke poured from the engine compartment behind him. The twin suns of the Kilos system blazed through his cockpit window, but all Taeho could think about was the fact that his engine was dying. Come on, Taeho whispered to his ship as he tried to restart the main power. Nothing worked. The engine made a horrible grinding sound, and then went completely silent. His fighter was now just a metal box falling through space. Taeho had been on a simple patrol mission, just a routine flight around the outer planets to check for any strange activity. He was supposed to be back at the space station in 6 hours. His commanding officer would be expecting his report. His sister Da-un was expecting his call tonight. She wanted to tell him about her wedding plans, but now none of that mattered. His ship was crashing toward the surface of Kelos 7, a small moon that nobody cared about. It was just a ball of rock and crystal with thin air and nothing alive on. The ground rushed up at him fast. Taeho pulled hard on the controls, trying to make his ship glide instead of crash. The landing gear wouldn't come down. The emergency systems weren't working either. All he could do was hold on tight and hope he would survive. The ship hit the ground with a terrible crash. Metal scraped against rock and crystal. Taeho's head hit something hard and everything went black for a moment. When he woke up, his ears were ringing and his shoulder hurt badly. Smoke was everywhere. Taeho coughed and tried to see through the gray cloud filling his cockpit. He unbuckled his safety belt and pushed open the emergency exit. The metal door fell off its broken hinges and crashed to the ground outside. Fresh air hit his face, though it was thin and cold. Taeho climbed out of his ruined ship and looked around. The landscape was like nothing he had ever seen. Sharp crystal. Formations jutted up from the ground like frozen lightning. The rocks were all different colors, purple, blue, and silver. 2 suns hung in the pale sky, making everything look strange and dreamlike. His ship was completely destroyed. The nose was crushed, the wings were bent and broken, and the engine was a burned-out shell. Black smoke still rose from the wreckage. Taeho walked around his fighter, checking to see what he could salvage. The communication system was dead. The long-range radio was smashed. Even the emergency beacon looked damaged, though maybe he could fix it. The life support system was still working, but barely. According to the readings on his wrist computer, he had maybe 3 days of oxygen left in his emergency tank. 3 days. That was all the time he had before he would suffocate on this empty moon. Taeho sat down on a flat rock and tried not to panic. He had been trained for situations like this at the academy. Stay calm, take inventory of your supplies, make a plan, signal for help. He opened his emergency kit and spread everything out on the ground. Water for 5 days, food bars for a week, medical supplies, a small toolkit, some metal sheeting for shelter, a portable heater that ran on battery power. Not much, but enough to keep him alive if rescue came quickly. The first thing Taeho did was try to fix the emergency beacon. He took apart the small metal box with his tools and found that the main power coupling was loose. He tightened it and tried to turn the beacon on. A small green light blinked once and then stayed on. "Please work," Taeho said out loud. His voice sounded strange in the thin air. The beacon was now sending out a distress signal, but he had no way to know if anyone would hear it. The nearest space station was very far away. It might take days for a rescue ship to reach him, even if they got his signal right away. As the day went on, Taeho built a small shelter using pieces from his crashed ship. He used the metal sheeting to make walls and found a way to hook up his portable heater. It wasn't comfortable, but it would keep him warm when the suns went down. He also started recording messages on his wrist computer. If something happened, to him at least people would know what went wrong. "Day 1, Taeho said to the small recording device. "My ship crashed on Kilo 7 after engine failure. I'm not hurt badly, just some bruises. The emergency beacon is working. I have supplies for a few days. If anyone finds this recording, please tell my sister Da-yun that I was thinking about her wedding. Tell my parents I love them." When the twin sun started to set, the temperature dropped quickly. Taeho had never been anywhere so cold and quiet. He huddled in his shelter and tried to stay warm. His heater made a soft humming sound that was the only noise on the entire moon. But then, as full darkness fell, something amazing happened. The crystal formations around him began to glow. Soft blue and purple light pulsed through the rocks like a heartbeat. It was beautiful and strange, like being inside a giant jewel. Tae-ho stepped outside his shelter to get a better look. The glowing crystals lit up the landscape for miles in every direction. As he watched, small creatures began to emerge from cracks in the rocks. They were about the size of cats, with smooth gray skin and large eyes that reflected the crystal light. They moved slowly and carefully like they were looking for something. At first, Tae-ho was afraid the creatures might be dangerous, but they paid no attention to him at all. They seemed to be eating small bits of crystal that had broken off from the larger formations. One of them, larger than the others, had a pattern of white spots on its back that blinked in rhythm with the crystal lights. "Hello there," Tae-ho said softly. The creature looked at him for a moment with its big eyes, then went back to eating crystals. "I'll call you Blink." Watching the peaceful creatures made Tae-ho feel less alone. He sat outside, his shelter for an hour, just observing them as they went about their quiet work. When he finally went back inside to sleep, he felt a little bit better about his situation. Maybe rescue would come tomorrow. Maybe he would see Da-eun's wedding after all. Maybe his parents wouldn't have to worry about their son being lost in space. But as he closed his eyes, Tae-ho couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't imagine. Tae-ho woke up on his third day feeling weak and dizzy. His oxygen meter showed almost empty. The red warning light blinked faster now, telling him he had maybe 6 hours of air left. He should have been dead already, but somehow his oxygen was lasting longer than expected. He crawled out of his small shelter and looked at the morning sky. The twin suns were rising again, making the crystal formations sparkle like diamonds. Blink and the other creatures had gone back underground when the light came. Tae-ho felt sad to see them go. They had been his only company during the long, cold nights. His emergency beacon was still working, still sending out its distress signal to empty space. Tae-ho had checked it every few hours for 2 days. Nothing. No answer. No sign that anyone had heard his call for help. He ate his last food bar slowly, trying to make it last. Water was running low too. Soon it wouldn't matter anyway. When the oxygen ran out, everything else would stop being important. Tae-ho was recording what he thought might be his final message when something impossible happened. His beacon started beeping. Not the steady pulse of his own distress signal, but a different sound. An incoming transmission. His hands shook as he activated the receiver. Static filled the air, then a voice came through speaking in Korean. "Emergency beacon detected. This is rescue vessel approaching Kilo 7. Please respond." "This is Lieutenant Tae-ho Kim of the Terran Defense Fleet," Tae-ho said quickly into his communicator. "I'm stranded on the surface. My oxygen is almost gone. Please hurry. We see you, Lieutenant Kim. Will be on the ground in 20 minutes. Stay calm." Tae-ho felt like crying with relief. Someone had found him. Someone was coming to take him home. He would live to see Da-eun's wedding after all. But as he waited, something bothered him about the rescue ship's signal. The communication codes they were using were old. Very old. Tae-ho had studied military history at the academy, and these codes hadn't been used for more than 20 years. Why would a modern rescue ship use such outdated systems? He tried to scan for the approaching vessel with his ship's damaged sensors. What he saw on the screen made no sense. The energy signature was unlike anything in the current fleet database. It wasn't a standard rescue ship or even a military vessel he recognized. 20 minutes later, Tae-ho heard the sound of engines overhead. He looked up and saw a ship coming down through the thin atmosphere. It was beautiful and strange, with smooth curves that seemed to flow like water. The hull was dark metal mixed with something that looked almost alive, like the skin of some great space creature. The ship landed about 100 meters away from Tae-ho's shelter. It touched down so gently that it barely disturbed the crystal formations around it. The landing gear that extended from its belly looked nothing like the mechanical struts on human ships. They moved like legs adjusting to the uneven ground. Three figures in environmental suits walked toward him. Their suits were sleek and form-fitting, more advanced than anything Taeho had ever seen. The material seemed to shimmer and change color as they moved. "Lieutenant Kim?" The lead figure's voice came through a helmet speaker. It was a woman's voice, clear and strong. "Yes, that's me. Thank you for coming. I don't know how much longer I could have lasted." The woman reached up and removed her helmet. Taeho stared in shock. She looked human, completely human, but something was different. Her movements were too smooth, too graceful. Her eyes were bright and alert in a way that seemed almost supernatural. "I'm Captain Haijin Park," she said. "This is Engineer Won-Sik Lee and Navigator Miran Cho." She gestured to her two companions, who also removed their helmets. They were both human, too. A man and a woman who looked to be in their 30s. "Captain Park?" Taeho repeated. The name was familiar somehow. "Have we met before?" "Not exactly," Park said with a small smile. "But I know who you are, Taeho. Your sister Daun is getting married next month. Your parents live on that farm outside Seoul. Your father had heart surgery last year." Taeho felt cold despite the warm morning air. "How do you know all that? That information isn't in any public records." Won-Sik stepped forward. He was tall and thin, with kind eyes and gentle hands. "We know many things, Lieutenant, more than we probably should." Miran nodded. She was shorter than the other two, with short black hair and a face that seemed both young and very wise. "We've been keeping watch over Earth and its colonies for a long time now." "Keeping watch?" Taeho asked. "What does that mean? Who are you people?" Captain Park looked at her crew members, then back at Taeho. "We should get you aboard our ship first. Your oxygen levels are dangerously low. We can explain everything once you're safe." They walked toward the strange vessel together. As they got closer, Taeho could see that the hull wasn't just metal. There were patterns in the surface that looked like veins or neural pathways. They pulsed with soft light, as if the ship itself was alive and thinking. "What kind of ship is this?" Taeho asked. "It's called the Horizon's Edge," Won-Sik said. "She's been our home for a very long time." The name hit Taeho like a physical blow. He stopped walking and stared at the three crew members. "The Horizon's Edge was lost 23 years ago. Everyone knows that story. The entire crew vanished beyond the Veil Nebula. They were declared dead." Captain Park turned around slowly. Her expression was sad but not surprised. "We weren't declared dead, Lieutenant. We were declared missing. And technically we still are." "That's impossible. You'd have to be... How old are you?" "I was 28 when we left Earth orbit for the first time," Park said. "That was 23 years ago." Taeho did the math in his head. Captain Park should be 51 years old now, but she looked exactly like a woman of 28. Miran laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Time works differently where we've been, Lieutenant. Space has rules, but they're not the same rules everywhere." They reached the ship's entrance, which opened without any visible controls. The airlock beyond was unlike anything Taeho had seen before. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting gently. Soft blue light ran along lines that looked like blood vessels. "Welcome aboard the Horizon's Edge," Captain Park said, as the outer door closed behind them. "I hope you're ready for some very strange answers to some very reasonable questions." Taeho felt the ship's artificial gravity take hold as the inner door opened. Clean, warm air filled his lungs. His oxygen problem was solved, but somehow he felt like his real problems were just beginning. As they walked deeper into the ship, Taeho noticed that the corridors curved and flowed like they had grown rather than been built. Lights pulsed along, the walls in patterns that almost looked like thoughts moving through a giant brain. "Captain Park," Taeho said quietly, "what happened to you out there? Where have you been for 23 years? She stopped walking and looked at him with those two bright eyes. "We've been learning, Lieutenant Kim. Learning things that no human was supposed to know. And now it's time for us to teach." The medical bay of the Horizon's Edge looked more like the inside of a living creature than a hospital room. Soft surfaces curved around Taeho as Miran checked his health with devices that seemed to read his body without touching him. Lights under his skin showed his heartbeat, his breathing, even his thoughts as colored patterns. "You're in perfect health," Miran said, studying the readings. Better than perfect, actually. Your oxygen should have run out yesterday, but somehow your body was using it more efficiently. Interesting. Wansik entered the room carrying a tray of food that smelled amazing. The meal looked normal enough, but it tasted better than anything Taiho had ever eaten. Each bite seemed to give him more energy and make his mind clearer. The ship provides what we need, Wansik explained when Taiho asked about the food. She learns what each person requires and makes it for them. She? Taiho asked. The Horizon's Edge is alive in ways that are hard to explain. We've learned to work with her instead of just flying her. Captain Park joined them in the medical bay. She had changed from her environmental suit into a simple uniform that looked both familiar and strange. It was clearly based on Terran military design, but the material seemed to shift and change color slightly as she moved. "How are you feeling, Lieutenant?" she asked. "Confused," Taiho answered honestly. "And scared. You're telling me this ship is alive. You look exactly the same age you were 23 years ago. You know things about my family that should be classified. I need some real answers." Park nodded and gestured for him to follow her. They walked through corridors that pulsed with gentle light, past rooms filled with technology that seemed to grow from the walls like plants. Everything felt organic and alive, but also incredibly advanced. They ended up on the ship's bridge, which took Taiho's breath away. Instead of the usual screens and control panels, the bridge was like standing inside a giant eye. The walls were transparent, showing space all around them. Stars streaked past as the ship moved at incredible speed. "We're already leaving Kalos 7, Miran said from what looked like a command chair that had grown from the floor. "We'll be back in Earth orbit in 18 hours. "That's impossible," Taiho said. "It takes 3 days to reach Earth from Kalos system, even with the fastest engines." Wansik smiled. "Not with Architect technology." "Architect technology," Taiho repeated. Captain Park moved to the center of the bridge, where a pillar of light showed star maps and data streams. "That's what we call them. The beings who found us after we disappeared beyond the Veil Nebula. They're ancient, Lieutenant. Older than our sun. They've been watching the galaxy for millions of years." "Watching for what?" "For species that might be ready to join them, to help them take care of the universe." Taiho sat down heavily in a chair that adjusted itself to his body. "You're telling me there are alien beings out there who recruited you to help them?" "Not exactly recruited," Park said. "More like tested. We spent 5 years in a place that exists between normal space and something else. A place where thoughts become real and time moves differently. The architects showed us things, taught us things, changed us." Miran turned her chair to face Taiho. "They showed us other species like us. Beings who started out on planets like Earth but grew into something more. Some became pure energy. Others learned to build stars. A few became guardians of entire galaxies. But most," Wansik added quietly, "failed the tests. They destroyed themselves or became so focused on their own problems that they never grew beyond their homeworlds." Captain Park waved her hand and the transparent walls of the bridge filled with images. Taiho saw beautiful crystal beings working together to heal a dying planet. He saw massive creatures made of living metal building impossible structures in deep space. He saw beings of pure light traveling between galaxies faster than thought. "These are the species that passed," Park explained. "They all started like us. Small, afraid, fighting each other over resources and territory. But they learned to work together. They learned to think beyond their own needs." "And humanity?" Taiho asked. "Humanity is being tested right now. Has been for decades. The architects create situations to see how humans respond. They watch us during wars, during disasters, during first contact with other species. They're looking for specific traits." Wansik moved to a wall covered in what looked like living circuits. "They're looking for adaptability, the ability to change and grow when faced with new challenges. They're looking for cooperation, the willingness to work together even when it's difficult. And they're looking for compassion," Miran added. "The ability to care about others, even those who are different or far away." Taiho thought about the glowing creatures on Kalos 7. He had named one of them Blink. He had watched them peacefully, and felt sorry when they disappeared underground. "Is that why my ship crashed? Was that a test?" Captain Park nodded. "Your engine failure was arranged, yes. The architects wanted to see how a human would handle being alone and afraid. They wanted to see if you would give up or keep trying, if you would be cruel to the local creatures or treat them with respect." "You were watching me," Tejo said. It wasn't a question. "We were. And you passed, Lieutenant. You showed resourcefulness when you fixed the emergency beacon. You showed hope when you kept recording messages for your family. You showed kindness when you watched the crystal feeders without disturbing them." Tejo felt angry suddenly. "So my life was just entertainment for you? My fear, my preparations to die, all of that was just so you could take notes?" "No," Park said firmly. "Your life was a demonstration of what makes humanity special. And that demonstration just earned our entire species an invitation to join something incredible." The bridge fell silent, except for the soft sounds of the living ship around them. Tejo looked out at the stars streaming past and tried to understand what he was being told. "What kind of invitation?" he finally asked. Wansik and Miran looked at Captain Park, who took a deep breath before answering. "The architects want to offer humanity a choice," she said. "We can continue as we are, slowly spreading across our local region of space, taking hundreds of years to develop the technology we need. Or we can accept their help and become what they call shepherds." "What does that mean?" "It means we would help guide younger species through their own tests. We would protect planets from cosmic disasters. We would maintain the balance that keeps the galaxy stable and safe," Myron added. "It means we would have access to technology and knowledge that would let us explore the entire universe. We could visit other galaxies. We could live for thousands of years if we wanted to. We could become something much more than what we are now." Tejo looked around the bridge at these three humans who had been changed by their contact with ancient beings. They looked the same on the outside, but he could see something different in their eyes, a depth of knowledge and experience that went far beyond their apparent ages. "And what's the price?" he asked. Captain Park smiled sadly. "The price is that we can never go back to being just human again. Once we accept this path, we become something new, something more, but also something different." She gestured to the star map floating in the center of the bridge. "The decision can't be made by governments or leaders, Lieutenant. It has to come from individuals who truly represent what humanity is at its best. People who have shown they can adapt, cooperate, and care about others." Tejo stared at her, beginning to understand. "People like me? People exactly like you." The next few hours aboard the Horizon's Edge changed everything Tejo thought he knew about the universe. Captain Park and her crew showed him records of dozens of other accidents like his own. Pilots whose engines failed in remote locations. Scientists whose research stations lost power at critical moments. Explorers whose ships suffered navigation errors that left them stranded on unknown worlds. Every single one was a test, Wansik explained as they reviewed the files. "The architects have been studying humanity for over 50 years, creating scenarios to see how individuals respond to stress, isolation, and the unknown." Tejo watched video logs from other stranded humans. A mining engineer named Jiwoo who had kept working to help his trapped crew even when he thought rescue was impossible. A medical officer named Yoon Hee who had risked her life to save alien creatures during a plague outbreak. A cargo pilot named Dong Min who had shared his emergency supplies with refugees he found on a damaged space station. "They all passed their tests," Miran said, "and they all received the same invitation you're getting now." "Where are they?" Tejo asked. Park activated a new display that showed a star map unlike anything in Terran databases. "Some are still on Earth living normal lives but watching for signs that humanity is ready for the next step. Others are with architect communities learning and preparing. A few are out in deep space making contact with other species who might be ready for their own tests." The ship's bridge darkened, and suddenly Tejo felt like he was floating in empty space. All around him, images appeared showing the true scope of what the architects had built. Massive structures that spanned entire solar systems, worlds that had been restored from complete destruction, species that had been guided from primitive hunters to galactic peacekeepers. "This is what shepherds do," Park said, her voice echoing, in the darkness. "We don't rule or control. We guide and protect. When a young species faces extinction from a natural disaster, we help them survive. When they develop weapons that could destroy their world, we teach them wisdom. When they're ready to join the galactic community, we introduce them to others who can help them grow." Tejo saw humans working alongside the crystal beings he had glimpsed before. He saw Terran ships using impossible technology to move entire populations away from dying stars. He saw Earth itself, but changed somehow, with cities that looked like living organisms and forests that grew in perfect harmony with advanced technology. "This is what Earth could become?" he asked. "If humanity chooses to accept the invitation," Wansik said. "But the choice has to be made by people like us, people who have been tested and proven themselves. The architects learned long ago that leaders and governments often make decisions based on fear or personal gain. Real change has to come from individuals who understand what it means to sacrifice for others." The images faded, and normal lighting returned to the bridge. Tejo felt overwhelmed by everything he had seen. The scope was beyond anything he had ever imagined, but it also felt right somehow, like this was what humans were meant to do. "How many others have seen this?" he asked. "Currently, there are 47 humans who have passed the individual tests," Miran answered. "But the architects estimate they need at least 100 before they make their formal offer to Earth's governments." Captain Park moved to stand beside Tejo. "The tests have been getting more frequent lately. More opportunities, more challenges. The architects believe humanity is very close to being ready." "What happens if we say no?" Tejo asked. "Nothing bad," Park assured him. "Humanity continues to develop naturally. In a few hundred years you might develop the same technology on your own, or you might follow a completely different path. The architects don't force anyone to accept their help. But," Wansik added, "species that refuse the invitation often face challenges they can't handle alone. Climate disasters, wars over resources, contact with hostile aliens who don't share their peaceful intentions. The universe can be dangerous for species that try to face it without guidance." Tejo thought about his sister Da-Un and her upcoming wedding. He thought about his parents on their farm outside Seoul. He thought about all the humans living their normal lives on Earth, having no idea that their entire future was being decided by people like him. "This is a lot to process," he said finally. "No," Park said gently. "When we first encountered the architects, it took us months to accept what they were offering. The responsibility is enormous." "What would happen to me if I said yes?" Miran smiled. "You would become like us, enhanced but still human. You would live much longer than normal. You would have access to knowledge and abilities that seem like magic compared to current human technology. You would help decide humanity's future. And if I said no, you would return to your normal life," Wansik said. "Your memories of this experience would be adjusted so that you remember being rescued by a normal Terran ship. You would never know this conversation happened. But," Park added, "you would still be watched. The architects would still consider you a potential candidate. They might create another test situation later." The horizon's edge suddenly shuddered slightly, and the star field outside shifted. They were dropping out of faster-than-light travel. "We're approaching Earth orbit," Miran announced. Tejo looked out at his home planet growing larger in the view screen. It looked beautiful and fragile from space, a blue and white jewel floating in the darkness. Somewhere down there, Da-Un was planning her wedding. His parents were working in their fields. Millions of humans were living their lives, unaware that their species was about to face the most important decision in its history. "I need time to think," Tejo said. "Of course," Park nodded. "But not too much time. The architects have been waiting for humanity to reach this point for decades. Other species are also being evaluated. If humanity isn't ready soon, the opportunity might go to someone else." One-Sick activated a display showing Tai-Ho's military records. According to official reports, you'll be listed as rescued by a routine patrol ship. Your commanding officers will debrief you about your engine failure. You'll be given a few weeks of leave to recover. Use that time to observe, Miran suggested. Watch how humans treat each other. See if you think we're ready for the responsibilities of being shepherds. The answer will become clear to you. Park handed Tai-Ho a small device that looked like an ordinary communicator. If you decide to join us, activate this. If you decide you're not ready, destroy it. Either choice will be respected. As Earth grew larger in the view screen, Tai-Ho realized that his simple patrol mission had become something that would affect the entire human race. The weight of that responsibility felt crushing, but also somehow exciting. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was part of something truly important. One more question, he said as they prepared for his transfer to a normal rescue ship. Why me? Out of all the humans in the galaxy, why was I chosen for this test? Captain Park smiled. Because when you were alone and afraid on that moon, facing death, you still took time to be gentle with creatures you didn't understand. You still recorded messages of love for your family. You still kept trying to survive, not just for yourself, but because you knew others were counting on you. She paused, looking out at Earth. The architects have learned that the future of any species depends on individuals who can maintain their humanity even in the darkest moments. You did that, Lieutenant Kim. The question now is whether you're ready to help the rest of our species do the same. 2 weeks later, Tai-Ho sat in his childhood bedroom at his parents' farm outside Seoul. The official report said he had been rescued by a routine patrol after 3 days stranded on Kalos 7. His commanding officers had questioned him about the engine failure, filed their paperwork, and given him medical leave to recover from his ordeal. But the small communicator device hidden in his desk drawer proved that none of the official story was true. Through his window, Tai-Ho could see his father working in the vegetable garden despite the doctor's warnings about his heart condition. His mother was hanging laundry on the line, humming an old song she had learned from her grandmother. Everything looked normal and peaceful, but Tai-Ho now saw it differently. He saw a species that was still learning how to take care of itself. Humans who fought over resources while their planet grew warmer. People who could create amazing technology but still used it to hurt each other. A race that could send ships to other stars but couldn't figure out how to feed everyone on their homeworld. Yet he also saw something else. He saw his father sharing vegetables with neighbors who had less. He saw his mother volunteering at the local hospital every week. He saw young people like his sister Da-Eun choosing to build families and create beauty, even when the future seemed uncertain. The wedding was in 3 days. Tai-Ho had promised Da-Eun he would walk her down the aisle since their father's heart wasn't strong enough for the emotional stress. She had been so happy to see him when he came home, crying and hugging him while telling him how scared she had been when she heard about his crash. I kept thinking I might never see my brother again, she had said. I don't know what I would have done. Now, as Tai-Ho watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors, he realized that Da-Eun's words could apply to all of humanity. The choice he was facing would determine whether his species would grow into something magnificent or remain trapped by its own limitations. His phone buzzed with a message from his friend Hyun-woo, who worked at the Space Defense Headquarters in Seoul. Want to grab dinner? I have some interesting news about first contact protocols. Tai-Ho met Hyun-woo at their favorite restaurant in the city. Over bowls of soup and grilled meat, his friend shared rumors he had heard from high-ranking officials. There are reports of unusual ship sightings, Hyun-woo said quietly. Vessels using technology we don't recognize. Some people think we might not be alone in the universe after all. What do you think about that? Tai-Ho asked. Honestly, I think it's exciting. Maybe contact with other species is exactly what humanity needs. Something to unite us, give us a common purpose. What if they wanted something from us? What if they expected us to change? Hyun-woo considered this while eating.